Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining the call from. My name is Abdulqudus. I am a front-end developer and an accessibility advocate. Um, I'm going in a minute. I'm just about to share my screen. Okay. Yeah, so I'm a front-end developer at Lotifiles and also an accessibility advocate. So what that means is I like to give talks like this that lets people know about accessibility, how they can get started, or if they are already into accessibility, to learn basic tips and tricks on how to make their application or website or digital product in general accessible to the public. Today we'll be taking a look at best practices for testing accessibility in your web applications. That's my Twitter handle as well at the bottom. If you have any questions after this talk, you can always reach out to me, send me a DM. I'll try to respond as fast as I can. Um, so just some key facts from the World Health Organization, the WHO. As of 2021, I think a survey carried out showed that we have an estimated 1.3 billion people that suffer from one form of disability or another. To put that into perspective, if you have six people in a room, chances are one of those six people have some sort of disability. Now, that's a very large number when you think about it. If you're trying to build the next Microsoft, the next Google, 1.3 billion is a huge percentage of people not to consider. Also shows that people that are living with disability die or tend to die 20 years earlier than others, and also they tend to develop conditions such as depression, asthma, and others. Also says that there are people living with disability that find it difficult to access your basic amenities like transportation and all of that. Now, this just shows how important accessibility is, not just in our digital products, but also in our day-to-day lives. Now, what exactly is web accessibility, right? If you've been seeing things like Ali or A11Y online, it's basically the 11 characters between the first character of accessibility and the last character. If you can see the image at the bottom right, you have the 11 characters between the A and the Y. So people just decided to shorten it to A11Y. You've probably seen something like L10N as well for localization. There are several abbreviations like that as well. Mobile accessibility basically means picking a website and making sure that it's developed such that people with disabilities can use the website, right? Whether it's visual impairments, people with mobility impairments, people with hearing impairments, whatever disability they are living with, they are able to use your website. Now, how exactly can you make your website accessible, right? There are several ways, there are several tips. The first one, and probably the most important one, is for people that have media, whether it's images, videos, whatever it is on your application, you want to provide a proper alternative to those media files. So if you have an image, you want to provide proper alt text. If you have videos, you want to provide the proper captions. Now, this is one very common mistake I've seen in a lot of websites where you have a lot of media files. People tend to ignore adding a proper alt text, which is quite bad because people with disabilities, people with visual impairments, use our websites differently. They would rely on tools like screen readers to navigate our websites. Now, for people that don't have visual impairments, they're able to see these images. They're able to see an image of a dog, an image of a cat. But people living with visual impairments, relying on screen readers, won't see the image of a dog or image of a cat. They would rely on the alt text to describe what exactly that image is. So not having the alt text basically means the users are not able to know what image that is, which is a problem if your website really depends on that image to describe a certain functionality on your website. Now, another one to consider is making sure your text content is readable, whether it's using the right color contrast, using the right font sizes, the right font types. You want to make sure the text is as visible as possible. You don't want people squinting their eyes to be able to read the text on your web application. If you look at the image on the right, we have a very nice font, really. It's quite fancy, but it's also difficult to read the text. right? So if you want to add fancy fonts in your web application, that's fine, but you want to make sure these fonts are as readable as possible. Um, Another one is making sure you use good color contrast. This is very important. I think it's one that is sometimes overlooked. You see people picking brand colors for their products, and then they end up picking colors that have poor color contrast. Might not be very poor, but then it doesn't exactly pass uh, the checklist provided by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Now we have some couple of bad examples. On the left, you have a blue text and a black background. It's not exactly visible, with green on orange, red on green, green on purple. And then on the right, you can see some pretty decent colors with very good color contrast. You have yellow on black, white on purple, and others. Now, there are three conformance levels when it comes to accessibility. You have the level A, level AA, and then the triple A. So ideally, when trying to make your website accessible, you want to aim for the second level, that's the double A standards. Now, there are different checklists to meet. We're not going to discuss all of them here. It's a lot, but if you are interested, you can head over to the WCAG website and you'd see the list of all the checklists ranging from the minimum A level to the triple A levels. Now, how exactly do we test our application? Now, I'm going to use a car as an example. If your car has a fault, you probably take it to a mechanic to have it checked out. Now, the first thing they'll do is probably try to run the diagnostics on the car, try to figure out what's going wrong or what went wrong with the car. Maybe use like a scanner to carry the diagnostics. And when that is done, then they'll probably head over to maybe changing the oil, servicing the car, and then when that is done, they'll probably take the car for a ride, make sure everything works as expected. Now it's similar to the way we have it in the car. We're going to have something like that when testing our websites. The first one is the automated testing. Now we're going to use tools already existing to test our website, right? An example of those tools, we have Google Lighthouse, we have Wave Extension. Now we're going to do a demo after all of this, just to show how we can test our website. This is just like the theoretical side of things. Yeah, so these websites would carry out checks on our website. These tools rather will carry out checks on our websites to make sure that the errors that we have, we're able to easily identify them. It tells us what went wrong, how we can fix it. Also gives us like resources that we can check out if we need further instructions on how to fix these errors. Now, one very good thing about this automated testing is it's easy to carry out, right? You don't need prior experience. Now, an example is using Google Lighthouse. I think Google Lighthouse is an extension that's available in Chrome by default, or if it's not available, you can head over to the web store, whether you're using Chrome or Mozilla, whatever browser you're using. You have Google Lighthouse available. All you need to do is download it, run the test as many times as you can, and it gives you a detailed analysis of things that went wrong and how you can fix them. Now, this is an example of a Google Lighthouse test results. It shows you accessibility score out of 100. So this just shows like we have a score of 61 out of 100, which is not good, but it's also not terrible. It also shows us what went wrong. And also if you drill down on one of the things that went wrong, it also shows you how you can fix them. Another extension that you can use to carry out automated testing is the Wave evaluation tool, or Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, short for Wave. When you try to run the extension, it shows you a couple of errors on your web page. And if you click on individual errors, it shows you what exactly went wrong, what element has that error, also tells you ways you can fix those errors. But it's not just that, right? We've carried out the automated testing, and like I said, in the case of a car, when you've done your diagnostics, you'd need to also do the dirty work. You'd need to change the oils, you'd need to make sure the tires are inflated. Now, we also need to do that when it comes to our website. We've done the automated testing, which it's easy to reproduce. You can just run those tests as many times as possible. right? You don't need to have a lot of knowledge or be an accessibility expert to be able to carry out this test. But there are also a couple of issues with automated testing. It doesn't exactly catch all the accessibility errors in your product. It's possible that you would miss one or two errors that, if you didn't carry out manual testing, you probably would not find out about these errors. Um, it's also possible that you need multiple tools to carry out this testing. You could, like we showed earlier, we mentioned an example of Lighthouse, mentioned an example of Wave. You might need two or more of these automated testing tools just to be able to carry out the test on your website. And it's also possible that it reports an error that isn't exactly a violation. Now, these are all automated testing tools, and you can compare how thorough these tools are compared to manual testing. And that is why it's important for us to carry out manual testing. An example of disadvantage of automated testing is this image we have here. It's clearly an image of a dog, but then the alt text shows a black cat playing in the fields. Now, if you had this in your website and you carried out automated testing on this particular image, it's going to pass because all automated testing tool is going to check is, does the image have an alt text, which it does. But the problem is the alt text is not correct. It shows you, it tells us it's a cat playing in the fields when in reality it's the image of a dog, right? So that's why it's very important for us to carry out manual testing to make sure errors like this don't make it into production. Now, manual testing. There are different types of manual testing that we need to carry out. The first one is the keyboard check. So making sure users are able to navigate your website from A to Z using just the keyboard. There's also the visual check, making sure the color contrast between icons, images, and the background is proper. There's also the content check, making sure there are no spelling errors, making sure the text is properly justified, making sure the font sizes are correct, the font weights are correct, the font styles are visible. And then there's also the screen reader check. Now that is making sure you're using tools people with disabilities would use to make sure that they're able to navigate your website properly. Now that's theoretical side of things. We are going to do a demo. I have this inaccessible website here. Now this is just for demo purposes. This is a very, very simple landing page. Chances are you, when building your application, you'd have something a lot more than this. You'd have several pages with a lot more interactions, but this is just for demo purposes. And one thing we're going to do here is we're going to be using the Wave extension. If you don't have it, you probably head over to the Chrome extension. So if you're on Chrome, you go to manage extensions, go to the Chrome web store, and then just search for Wave evaluation tool, and then you can install it. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to bother reinstalling it. And then when you have that installed, you head over to your website, and then here I have the extension. All I need to do is click on it, and then it gives us this very fast, very detailed errors and tells us, okay, we have 6 errors, 17 contrast errors, 8 alerts, 3 area issues, and 1 feature. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try and go through each and every one of these errors and try to fix them. So let's start with the first one. If we click on this, we see linked image missing alternative text. It basically tells us that this particular image here doesn't have an alt text. And if we were to fix that, we'd go to the code here. I'm using code pen. If we try to find that particular image, now this is the image. I think I should try to zoom in on this. Yes, I think this is visible enough. So this is the image here. We have an image, the href of index or HTML, and then the image, but the image doesn't have a text, right? Doesn't have an alt text. So what we can do here is just do alt and say this is go to home page. This if we go to this error is in errors. There are no errors. Sorry, refresh this. We take a look at the second error, which says there's a very low contrast between the text and the background colors. Now, when we're looking at the slides earlier, we mentioned how you need to have good color contrast between texts. Now, I'm just going to turn this off so we can take a look at the, hang on, yeah. So we can take a look at the color contrast. Now, this seems a little bit visible, right? You could say, it's a dark text on a white background, it's visible, but there are people that are not able to see this text as you would expect, right? They have maybe partial vision loss to maybe color blindness, whatever visual impairment they have to live with, right? They could struggle to see this color. So you want to make sure the color has a very good color contrast. So I'm just going to run the wave tool again, and let's see what it says. Now it says the color contrast is 4.17 ratio 1. And then what we aim to have, or what we would ideally want to have, is a contrast ratio of at least 5. Now, this has a ratio of 4.17 to 1. So we want to at least make it a bit darker to make sure it has a color contrast of at least 5. So if we head over to our code pen, we look for the text. Now this is it under the ul.li. It has a color of 7C, 7C. So we're going to copy this, go to the color contrast checker. We're going to paste this here. And then, so we have a color contrast of 4.17 ratio 1, tells us that it fails the web content accessibility guidelines. So what we want to do here is pick a darker color. We don't want dark, we don't want it to be completely black, we want it to be at least gray, but it should still be, yeah. So we picked a darker color which has a contrast ratio of 9.58 ratio 1, which is good. So I'm just going to copy this, head over to my code and paste this here. So when we save this, let's refresh this. Right, so it's a bit more dark now, and if you try to run the test, now those errors have disappeared, which is good. Now, by heading over to this button, what does it say? It says there's a very low contrast between the text and the background color. So here we head over to our subscribe button. The background has a color of green, so we're going to copy this color again, go to our contrast checker and paste this here. So color contrast of 2.9 ratio 1. We don't want this. We probably would look for something a bit darker, I think. So let's make it a bit dark. Yes, so this is 5.97, so which is manageable. This is good. So we're going to copy this, change the color as well, save this, then let's refresh this again, and then run this. Now all the errors on the nav bar have disappeared, right? So we head over to this one. What do we have? Also very low contrast, 2.9 ratio 1. So we go to this, it was, yeah, club name. So we're just going to use the same green that we had for the button, and we're going to save this. Moving on to the next one, it says a text appears to be a heading, but is not a heading element. Now, this is a very common mistake you see a lot of people do when building websites. For people that don't have visual impairments, when you see this, you think, oh, this is a heading text, which is fine, right? But when you check the code, you will realize that, let's expand this. So this is the text, right? We're using a p tag with a class of h1. And this probably happened because we wanted to style our heading text a bit differently. So we decided to go with a p tag or a p element in HTML, when in reality, we can just simply use a h1 text and still be able to achieve the same result. Now, if we save this, then refresh this. Now, we didn't exactly see much of a difference. It's pretty much the same thing. Have like join the club, same font size, same font styles, but instead of using a p tag, we're using a h1 tag. Now, the difference is for people with without visual impairments, they're able to see the text properly. They won't see any difference. But for people using screen readers, the screen readers would announce that this is a heading text to them. So if you use just a p tag, they won't know that it's a heading text, just announces it as a normal text, which you don't exactly want. Now, we're going to run the extension again, and then here you have no errors, and it tells you, okay, this is a proper H1 first level heading is present. Now, if you go to the next one, what does it say? It tells us that we have a very low color contrast between the text and the background color. So for this, we could just inspect this to see what is the shape. So we have the background color and color of this. So we can head over to our code, and then there's the CSS. Seven C. Let's just make this be a bit darker. It's just the 4545. Yeah, let's do this. Right. Then let's refresh this. Now let's run the extension. Now we no longer have the color contrast errors, and a lot of the contrast errors that we had has been cleared. We had 17 earlier, now we have just 4, which is a very good sign. Now let's carry on. Here we have another warning that says the text appears to be a heading, but is not a heading element. Now, if we check our code to find rare medical conditions, yeah, here we go. We use a p text and style it such that it looks like a H2, but we're not using an H2 element. So what we just need to do is change this to a H2 text, a H2 tag, and that error should be solved, even though it doesn't really change anything visually. It should still be the same thing. Yeah, here we go. It doesn't change anything visually. It's still the same style, still the same font weight and all of that. But if we run the testing tool again, that error is no longer there. Now to the next one, tells us fully justified text is present, and this one says there's a very low contrast between the text and the background color. So what we're going to do here, we look for that particular A tag. So we have an A under a class, P of class bullet. Yeah, here we go. So we're going to change this to 4545, much darker shade of gray. Then if we refresh this, then yeah, so that error is no longer there. If we scroll down a bit, we have, go to the end of this, it tells us the link contains no text, right? For that, let's head over to our code once more. So there's a lot of SVGs. I'm just trying to find the exact one. Yeah, so we have a list that contains an A tag with an SVG inside of it, right? So this links here is like an SVG. So this is like an SVG of Twitter wrapped inside of a link. Same with the Twitch and the Instagram as well. So what we want to do here is, the problem is that this is just a link without the text. Now for users that rely on mouse, that don't have visual impairments, they can understand that this is the link to Twitter, this is the link to Instagram. But for people that need screen readers or rely on screen readers, the screen reader doesn't know what image this is. It doesn't know what link this is, doesn't know where it takes us to. So we need to find a way to attach some sort of label to this image. Now, one way we can do it is, if we are using SVGs, we can add a title tag. So SVG supports title. So we can just say, I think this is for the Twitch. Let's say link to Twitch. Then we can copy this, do the same thing for Twitter. Let's see, link to Twitter. Do the same thing for Instagram. So SVG title, link to Instagram. So if we save this, we refresh this, it should not change anything visually, right? You still have your Twitter, your Twitch, your Instagram. But then if we run the with extension. Once more, we don't have those errors anymore, right? So a lot of these things that we've changed in our code didn't really affect so much visually, but for users that rely on screen readers, it goes a long way to help them navigate our web application. Now let's try to resolve the remaining errors that we have here. If we click on this, we have low contrast between the text and the background color. So let's fix that as well. We had a dark shade of green earlier. Let's see if we can find that. Yeah, this is it. So let's copy this. And then let's find, let's see what's in this inspect. Okay, then we go to our CSS, have the form, the button. So we change the background color of the button to something a bit darker, and then refresh this. Can close this. So when we run this, we no longer have that contrast error, and then all the contrast error here has gone away. Now we have one more error here. It says if form control doesn't have the corresponding label. Now what that means is if we go to our HTML, let's find the input. Now the input has a placeholder that says enter your email address, but there are a couple of things that are missing here. There's no label. Now this is also a very common mistake that people tend to make. So if we head over to this site once more, let's hide this. Now here we can see enter your email address, which is fine. It's a very good placeholder. But for people using screen readers, again, screen readers won't announce the placeholder. Screen reader needs a label. So if you were using a screen reader and you try to access this input element, it just tells you that this is an input text. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to enter into the input text. It doesn't tell you what type of input it is, right? So to do that, we need to add a label to our inputs. Now let's do something like label for, so we need to add an ID. It says email, and then we'll do label for email. Let's see, enter your email address. We save this, we refresh this. Now the problem with that is this adds an extra text, but what if in your design you didn't have this extra text? All you had was this placeholder thing. There are several ways you could do it. One way is to make this label to be for screen readers only. There are several ways to do that, but to show you one way to do it, let's add a class called screen reader only. And then in our CSS, we're going to style the screen reader only class. Let's just add it at the beginning here. So the screen reader only. The first thing we want to do is give it a position of absolute to take it out of the current viewport. And we're going to give it a width of 1 pixels, height of 1 pixels. We are going to set the Z index to, let's see, 0, -1. We set the opacity to 0. Let's see, we also want to give it the, yeah, I think this works. So if we save this and we refresh this, right now we no longer have that text. It's still there technically, but it's not visible. Like you can't see the text on the screen. But with screen readers, that text is still technically there, and the screen reader is able to read the label to the users. It's going to tell you enter your email address as a label. So now that is one way to add a label to an input field. But if we don't want to use all of the SR only class and all of that, we also have something called area label that we can add to the input. So if we comment this out, if we don't want this, we can just say, let's copy the enter email address. We're going to add something called area label to the input field, and then we say enter email address. Now this does the exact same thing as what the label earlier did, but Yeah, if we refresh this, it doesn't change anything visually. Or if we try to, um, run the wave tool, we don't have that error anymore. So here it says, yeah, and your area label is present. Yep, which is good. Now we pretty much have, okay, we have just one more error left. Where is the error? Is this it? Hmm, trying to see, let's see. One, all text is missing. I think it's the image on the right. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is it. So we have this image here that doesn't have an alt text. So let's just describe this. We want to see what image is this? Image old man being away in a wheelchair. Yeah. So this is nice alt text. So we can save this. If we refresh this now, we should no longer have, yeah. So now we have 0 errors, which is good. So this is a very quick example of how you can use automated testing tools to test your websites to make sure you easily solve all of those errors. So we didn't have to do too much. We just, ran the wave tool, checked for errors, where did the error occur, go to our text editor, our code editor, fix those errors, refresh the page, run this testing tool again to check if those errors have been resolved or not. Now that's very easy. That was very quick. But that alone does not solve a lot of the issues we have. We also need to carry out manual testing, like I mentioned earlier. So let's just refresh the page here. Now, if we take a look at some of these things, if you look at this SVG here, it's not exactly a very good color contrast. The color of the SVGs are not exactly clear. But when we ran the wave tool, it didn't tell us that this image has a very poor background color. And that's one disadvantage of using automated testing tool or relying on automated testing tool alone for testing the accessibility in web applications. It doesn't exactly know whether the color contrast of image is good or not. Now that is where manual testing comes into play. We checked this image and we saw that, okay, this doesn't have a very good color contrast. So what can we do? Let's head over to our code. Then, so we have the SVGs. We're just going to update this. Twitter. So let's just change this field to 5. Save this. This. Yep. So we changed the color of the Twitter button. This is a lot clearer. We're able to see the images properly compared to the other two. So let's just update fill for the rest of the SVGs. So let's do space this here. Going to do the same thing for this one. Space this here. And then we refresh. Now, yeah, we've been able to update the color of the SVGs. Now they look a lot more sharper, a lot more clearer. Now, another thing that we could, so let's go through this. Let's see if there are potential things to fix. So we have join the club, subscribe to our newsletter. We have the rare medical conditions, which is fine. We have the mermaid syndrome. So far the texts look nice. We don't have any issues. Now let's try to carry out manual keyboard checks. So I'm not sure how visible this is, but I'm going to be using the tab key right now. So let me just refresh the page. So usually when people try to navigate your website with the keyboard, you use the tab key to go from one element to another, one focusable element to another. So when I click on the tab key, it doesn't show anything. If I click on tab, even though it's actually moving from one element to another, I don't exactly see where I'm on the page. Like you can see it's scrolling through the page, but I don't know where exactly I am on the page. Now to do that, one thing we can do is head over to our CSS and we say um yeah. So one mistake that we make a lot is to turn on outline. I mean turn off the outline rather. So we have outline set to none for every element in the body. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this. We're going to save this. Now let's refresh the page and let's try to tab through elements again. Now you can see a blue outline on the logo, which tells us, okay, that's where we are at the moment. If I click on tab again, it goes to about us, which now we know where we are on the page when we click on tab. When I click on tab again, goes to community, goes to donate, Q&A, subscribe, goes to the Sirenomelia link, MSUD link. This one goes to the Twitter link, um, goes to the Twitch link, goes to the Instagram link. And then we noticed something, right? Let's go back. When we moved from this link here, we're supposed to be able to go to the form, but it skipped the form. So we need to check that. Why exactly is it skipping the form? So let's go to our code. Let's check the form, what's going on. So the first thing is we set a tab index of -1. So what tab index means is when you click on tab, where exactly should that element come in the order of the tab. If we set it to -1, that means we should not be able to use tab to access that element. So we're going to take this tab index off. We're going to refresh the, we're going to save this, refresh the page. Now let's see. So subscribe. Now, when we move from here, we should be able to focus on the form, which was as expected. So I'm able to type what exactly I want to type. If I click on tab again, it skips the submit button, which is not what we want. So yeah, so here again, we have tab index of 1, which is not what we want. So we want to take this off as well. Let's save this, let's refresh the page, and then go from here. Then it moves to the subscribe button, which is exactly what we want. Now, so these are example of errors that you won't see otherwise if you don't carry out these checks manually. And that is why it's very important after you've carried out automated testing to go through the website yourself, try to navigate it from the beginning to the end, and try to figure out potential errors that could occur this um, with the sites. So now we've gone through a lot of the errors. Let's see, is there any other thing? Yes, so one more thing, we probably would not notice this except if you're using a screen reader. But here we set area hidden to true. I'm not exactly sure how to do this. Let me see if I can turn on my screen reader. Settings, accessibility, voiceover. Um, can anyone hear the screen reader? Just was anyone hearing anything from the screen reader?
No, I didn't hear anything.
Uh, okay, I think I would need to share just the browser tab. Um, okay, so this. Mhm, okay. Just turn on the screen reader. Settings. Ha- Um, All right, can we hear the screen reader now?
No. Did you when you're sharing the screen? Did you enable sound?
Yeah, I think the sound should be enabled. Give me a moment.
Okay.
Um,
Link. About us.
how about now?
You are currently on a link.
Yes,
Inside web
yes, yes.
content. To click this link,
Yes.
press
Okay.
Control
Perfect.
Option Space. To exit this web area, press
So
Control Option Shift up
what,
arrow.
what this demo right now is, what I'm just trying to do is to show us how screen readers work. So the first thing we do is when we refresh the page.
Link image. Go to homepage. Link image. Go to homepage. Medical Mysteries
So
Club.
it
Infobar.
says, oh no.
Main link image. Go to homepage.
So the
Link
first thing that
image.
happens
Go to
is
link image. Go to homepage.
tells us that
You
this
are
is a
currently on a
link
link. Inside web
of
content. To click
image,
this link,
goes to
press
homepage.
Control Option Space.
If
To
I
exit
click
this
on
link.
tab,
About us. You
we
are currently
hear
on a link. Inside web content. To click this link, press Control Option Space.
yeah.
To exit this web area,
Okay.
press Control Option
It's
Shift
fine.
up arrow.
Fine. Yeah. So now it tells us link about us. If we go to the next one,
Link
tells us
community.
link community,
Link donate.
donate,
Link
Q&A,
Q&A.
link
Link
subscribe.
subscribe.
So if you click
Link
on, if you
Siren
click
Amelia.
clicking
You
tab,
link link
and then
Klinefelter syndrome.
let's,
You are currently on a link. Inside web
if we
content.
click
To
on
click, enter
next,
your email address. Required menu pop up. Edit text email.
tells us enter email address.
List subscribe one item. You are currently on a list. Inside web content. To move between items in this list, press Control Option Right arrow. Link image. Link to Twitter. Image. Link to Twitch. Link image. Link to Instagram.
So now what
You
I
are
want to
currently
do,
on a link.
right,
Voiceover off.
is to remove let's remove these title tags that we added to the SVGs. So we're just going to comment this out, comment this out, comment this out.
Sorry,
Um,
we can't see your screen. Are you seeing the what is it?
oh yes, I had to share one tab earlier, so we'll be able to hear the screen reader. So what I did was to remove the title tags from the SVGs that we added. Um, Let me see if I can share my tab and share the whole window so we're able to see. I hope this screen reader will be able to work too. So yeah, what I did was to comment out the title tags that says link to Twitter, link to Twitch, link to Instagram. Um, and then I'm going to turn on the screen reader again.
Welcome to VoiceOver.
Can we hear the screen
VoiceOver on
reader?
system settings. VoiceOver window. Sidebar table. Row 15 of 37. Accessibility Chrome. CodePen. Inaccessible landing page for learn accessibility from web dev. Google Chrome. Abdulqudus window.
Are we able to hear the screen
Inaccessible
reader?
landing
Just
page for learn
quickly.
accessibility from web dev. Web content has keyboard focus. You are
Yes.
currently on a web content. Inside a group. To enter the web area, press Control Option Shift down arrow. To exit this link image, go to homepage. You are currently on a link. Inside web content. To click this link, press Control Option Space. To exit this web area, press Control Option Shift up arrow.
Can anyone hear the screen reader, please?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to use tab to go to the link to Twitter and Twitch that we had at the bottom of the page, and you'd see what the screen reader is going
Link,
to
link, link,
announce.
link, link,
So
link, link,
let's
link. Enter
go.
your email address. Required menu pop. List subscribe one item. Link, image. Link to
Oh yeah,
Twitter.
we need to refresh
You are
this.
currently on a link. Inside web link image. Go to leaving
Let's
code
do
pen.
this.
Inaccessible landing page for learn access link image. Go to homepage. Link image. Go to homepage.
This can
Link
get very
image.
annoying
Link
most
link
times,
link
but
link link
let's
link
just
link
do
link link.
this.
Enter your list subscribe one item. Link image comma Zyme. Shresh. You
Yeah.
are currently
So
on a link. Inside
I
web
don't know if
content.
you
To
heard
click this link,
what
press
the screen
Control
reader said when
Option
it tried
Space.
to
To exit this web
explain
area,
what
press
that link
Control Option.
was.
List subscribe one item.
But
Link
let's
image comma Zyme Shresh. Link image comma Zyme Shresh. Link image comma Zyme Shresh.
Yeah, so
You are currently on a
it's
link.
trying to describe
Voiceover
the
off.
image, but it doesn't know where exactly the image was, and it just said a couple of gibberish, right? And that's why it's very important most times to add label to images that don't have text. So an example is this image here. It's just an image without any sort of describing or label to describe what exactly that image is, and that's why it's very important to have some sort of text descriptions. Now, all we needed to do was to add the titles to those SVGs that says link to Instagram, link to Twitch, link to Twitter, and the screen reader was able to. So if we just do this once more, um, let's turn on the screen reader.
Welcome to VoiceOver. Pro link image link subscribe link. Enter your email list. Subscribe one item. Link image link to Twitter.
So it tells us
You
link
are
to
currently
Twitter,
link image link
link
to
to
Twitch
Twitch,
link image
a link to
link to
Instagram.
Instagram.
So it's basically
Voiceover
trying
off.
to read um what is inside of the title tag. Now, those are things that you probably would not know, or you probably would not know that it's an issue if you don't carry out this manual testing, or if you don't use these screen readers to test yourself, right? And that's why it's very important most times when you're carrying out this testing to be thorough about it, right? We've done the automated testing, we saw some of the errors, we're able to resolve them. We also did manual testing, right? Carried out this testing ourselves, went to our website, went from the beginning of the website up until the end. And then we also did screen reader testing to see how screen readers would read out some of the elements in our web application. Now that's pretty much it for this demo. It was like quite simple because it's a very simple landing page. But if you are working on a much larger web application, it's very important to take all these things into consideration when you are starting out your application, when you're starting out the building process. Because if you decide to wait until you are done before you carry out this test, not before you carry out the manual testing or the screen reader testing, it's probably going to take a very long time, and sometimes it might be almost impossible to fix some of the errors. Imagine you have about 20 landing pages with a couple of dashboards and several other interactions. You'd need to make sure you go through all of these things one after the other, which can be very stressful. But if you had the goal of accessibility in mind when starting out your product, you know that okay, the colors I need to pick for my web application needs to have a very good color contrast. I can't just use pink on yellow. I can't use light green on white. I need to make sure I pick colors with very good color contrast. You know that when you're picking out your fonts, you would pick fonts that are readable. You won't use font sizes that are too tiny. You know that you should not use p text or p tags. You should use h1s or h2s where they are required. You also know that if you have text or images rather without descriptions, you should add the proper alt text, or you should add labels to your input fields and all of that. So when you have all of these things in mind when building out your web application, chances are when you get to the final stages I need to carry out automated testing, you won't have a lot of issues or errors in your web application, and you'll be able to easily resolve the ones that are left. So yeah, that's pretty much it. This is like a very simple demo. It can get a lot more complicated than this. You can have a lot more testing to carry out, but this just shows us how important accessibility testing is, and how easy it is also to carry out. So that brings us to the end of this demo. I hope this has been quite insightful, and if you have questions, now is the time to ask.
All right. Thank you so much, Abdulqudus. Really appreciate your whole session, and I really enjoyed and learned so many things. So if you have any questions, please you can unmute yourself and ask. You don't have to type. Any questions? Any from anybody? Anyone? Yes, yes, yes. You have access to the recording. It will be uploaded on YouTube and it will be shared to everyone. For you to access it, you can check on OSCA Minna on YouTube. You can be able to access the YouTube video. The video is going to be on YouTube, so it will be uploaded to OSCA Minna YouTube channel page. So you can just access it there. Okay. Any more questions from anyone? All right. I think I have a couple of questions here, like three here. So the first one is, what role does product designers have to make web accessibility better? Sometimes there is this back and forth that you have across all these stubborn product designers. They will give you a specific color that is clearly not being accessible to people, but they will insist that you use that color based on they know colors more than you. So how can you be able to tackle that issue?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And a lot of times it's why it's very important for not just developers to have an understanding of accessibility, but also designers, because they are the first point of contact when it comes to digital products, because they would be the ones to come up with colors, to come up with designs. And if these designs are inaccessible, you would have to go through like a back and forth to make them understand that okay, this is not accessible and all of that. A typical example, like you mentioned, is when they come up with colors that are not exactly accessible, right? One very good way is to show them the color contrast checker. Tell them that okay, look, um, these colors that you shared with me are not accessible, and maybe just like let's say an example of this color have has a poor color contrast of 2.24. Show them that okay, this is not accessible. It fails the accessibility standard, so we can't exactly use this color. Just let them understand that some of these things you are using are not accessible. But also, you need to be considerate. There are times where I've seen people that try to use accessibility as excuses to not build certain features. So, take for example, your designer gives you a very fancy animation, and in your mind, you're like, "Nah, this is too difficult. It's going to affect accessibility." So then you push back and say, "Oh no, this is not accessible," and all of that. When in reality, there are ways to make it accessible, right? So, you need to strike a balance pretty much. Let them understand why maybe certain colors should not be used, or certain styles, certain designs are not accessible. But also from your own end, you should be able to make those things accessible. A typical example is yeah, if you have this image, take for example, this was like an animated image, right? Usually with accessibility, you want to make sure with animations, because it's very difficult to make it accessible. So maybe a front-end developer could say, "Oh, let's not add this design because it's not accessible," and then you maybe have like a back and forth with the designer. When in reality, as a developer, you have several options to make it accessible. Either you display the image and then hide it for screen readers, or make sure the animation can be paused and played. There are several options, right? So basically, being able to strike a balance, but most importantly, also it's for designers as well to understand accessibility, understand what exactly they need to do from their end, making sure when they're selecting the font styles, making sure it's accessible, making sure it's visible, making sure it has like making sure your colors have proper contrast and all of that. So when they understand accessibility, it's much more easier for them to create accessible designs that they give to developers that then would need to carry out the implementation. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. Hello, hello, hello. Can anyone hear me? Hello. Oh my god, have I been speaking to myself?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, I can hear
I
you.
thought I was speaking to
I can
myself.
hear
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So what I was saying, does anybody have any questions maybe from what is I asked? If you want to chip in and add something, or from what he discussed, want to chip in and add something before I move to the next question. Okay, it's another silent. So is there like a standard step-by-step checking to make sure that you are following the guidelines for making your web app or websites accessible?
Um, so there is the WCAG. Let me just send the link to yeah. So I'm just going to copy this. So it contains like a set of it's a set of guidelines pretty much that tells us the things we need to fix. But it's a bit it's a lot to take in. So one thing I can do is I could probably look for they're like checklists. Let me find this. Uh, so it's like an accessibility checklist. So it's like things you need to. Let me see if I can. Okay, yeah, exactly. So this is it's also one very good resource. It helps you like it's like a checklist that you can follow to make sure you've um you've conformed to the standards. But there's no official checklist, right? Rather, it's knowing the things that could break accessibility or the things that can improve accessibility, and making sure you either avoid those things or you incorporate those things in your web application, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Can you please share the link to listen the Wave package? Is it the package or the extension you're using? Yes.
Yes, I
Please
can
share
do
that
that.
with me. Yeah. So while you are doing
Uh,
that, this is my last question. So is there like a tool for mobile developers that they can use to run this kind of test that you just did now? I know manual tests is for everyone, both the developers and the QA, but
yeah.
for the what is it? Who is this again? But for the mobile devs, I don't know if there's a specific tool that can carry on that test.
um Well, so it's a bit different with mobile developments. We don't have, or I'm not sure if there is Lighthouse or these extensions available. But mobile phones have screen readers as well.
Yes.
For example, if you are on Android, if you go to accessibility, there's something called TalkBack.
Hmm.
It's like the equivalent of a screen reader. I think iOS has something as well. I'm not exactly sure what it is for iOS, but there are screen readers by default installed on your mobile application, so you can use that to test. But I'm not sure of any automated accessibility testing tool for mobile development.
Okay. All right then.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that's my last question. Does anybody have any question before we wrap up? Anybody? I can see Lukman. I can see Hakim. Lukman. I even forgot you're here. I made an inquiry on Proteus and you didn't even say anything. You didn't even try to defend your people. Okay, oh, I rest my case. Anybody? If you are shy to talk, you can just type. If you are shy to talk, you can just type. So it seems we don't really have any more questions. So thank you very much, Abdulqudus. We really appreciate you having your time to walk us through this interesting topic on best practices for web accessibility. I really enjoyed it, even though I'm not into web. Uh, my stack is mobile actually. That's why I was asking for mobile part. But the session was really enlightening, and even though like I didn't know much about web, but this particular thing made me to understand that there is more for web, and I will go from my own part to do a research on how this kind of automated test can be carried out on the mobile aspect of things because it is something very very vital because you need to be considerate sometimes. And we will deal with devices, and the devices have different screen sizes. You can might see phones that look like how will I even put it? That look like an external hard drive size. Phones that look like notepad or tablets. So those are one of the most things that we really need to consider when we're building our apps. And the worst case is Samsung bringing in this foldable. When they brought out this foldable things devices, I was like, these people they want to kill us, but we'll still survive. So thank you very much, everyone. See you on the next one.